All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Patriot Underground. Today is November 22nd, 2025. Thank you so much for joining me, folks, to discover the truth beneath the surface. As always, I really do appreciate everybody out there taking the time to listen. And of course, as you can see, I'm welcoming back my good friend, Matt Geiger from Verity Metals. Matt and I have been getting to know each other over the past couple of months. He's a really great guy. And for those of you folks who have been following the channel, you know that he is an absolute expert in precious metals. His company is Verity Metals. And indeed, there have been a lot of folks out there who have watched the previous couple of episodes and been inspired by Matt's knowledge, his presentation, his integrity. They've gone to Verity. They've given him a call, as I've been urging folks to do. And they've gotten some absolutely amazing deals, so much so that a lot of folks have come back for a round 2 and even a round 3. They really love the way Matt does business and makes himself accessible to the audience. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about precious metals, but we're also going to kind of cover the landscape and just talk about the 40,000-foot view of everything that's been going on. So with that, Matt, how you doing today, brother? Great to see you.
Good, my man. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's always fun doing a show on a Saturday. You know, it's
yeah.
You have the work week, and then you get up and you do another show. But that's cool with me. I love it. And yeah, thank you to your audience. They've been like unbelievable. You know, just amazing patriots that they know what's going on. You know, it's nice when you can deal with people that you really like talking to. You know what I mean? It makes my job easy. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And that's really the reason that I like to have you on, because there's so many people out there who are looking to get into precious metals, gold and silver. But as you know, there are like a million different options, places that they can purchase from, and everywhere from like the local dealers all the way up to these, big call centers like we've talked about in the past. But having a face that they can relate to and a voice that they can relate to, I think goes a long way, because it really kind of gives folks sort of an entree into what you do, who you are, what you're all about before they even pick up the phone to call you. And indeed, the conversations we've had, I think, have been confidence builders for a lot of folks out there, because they definitely see the potential and they want to get into precious metals, but a lot of folks don't really know where to begin. So I thought in terms of our discussion today, we could begin there, and then we'll kind of circle back towards the end and we'll talk a little bit about Verity. But I always like to pick your brain in terms of, where we're at as far as the overall market right now. Certainly gold prices and silver prices are absolutely incredible right now in terms of, gold holding strong over $4,050 an ounce for silver. Let me just kind of bring that up for folks so they can see it. And I monitor this on a pretty regular basis just to kind of see what the market looks like. But you're certainly the expert, so I just wanted to give you the floor here for a couple of minutes to talk about everything that's happening, and kind of the trends that you're seeing, and why right now is an excellent time to invest. So what can you tell folks?
Well, just real quick before you mention a face, and I mean, what a face to be dealing with.
Indeed.
No, it's. I think we have a lot of issues coming our way. I think we're going to be going into Venezuela. Things will get kinetic in Venezuela. Things will get kinetic in probably South America, specifically Mexico, against the cartels. I think there's a lot of anticipation of this. I believe Delta forces are on the ground right now in places like Venezuela and Mexico, already taking on the cartels, and just no one's talking about it. That's my opinion. That's what I think is going on. Trump's going to try to make this as quick and easy of a process to take out these basically drug dealers. I mean, look at Venezuela. They've been bringing in all this fentanyl and all this nonsense. They're the root of all the voting machines. And of course, these countries will tie to our own politicians, right? Our own politicians are doing dirty deals with these countries. And as this stuff really starts to come out, I would expect gold and silver prices to absolutely skyrocket again. I mean, we're seeing gold and silver, gold's holding at over 4,000. Silver's been holding at 50. Yep. Right. We got a little bit of an uptick to 55, 56. Then it dropped down to maybe 47, 48. And now it's holding steady at 50. So this is what you'd call support levels. I believe that probably by the end of the year, we could see $75 silver. I really believe that, and probably $5,000 gold. And as these events continue to, manifest and we start to see what's been really going on, I would expect prices to push higher. Really, why? Not because gold and silver are getting more valuable. It's because everything else is becoming less valuable. There's going to be major problems with the dollar. But Trump, he's kind of built this parallel economy. So the more this system crashes, the more Trump can start to present this parallel economy that he's brought. And I believe that's going to have to deal with gold, silver primarily. Some of the cryptocurrencies, you've seen a massive dip in crypto. So anybody that's into cryptocurrencies, I know you're buying right now. I certainly am.
Oh yeah.
But I'm very uncertain about what the cryptos are going to do. I'm very uncertain. Like, I love XRP. I think it's great. I think everybody should be in it. But hey, something could come around, some type of technology, some type of whatever that could come and totally replace it. So I think really the safest bet right now would be gold and silver, right? It's your bridge to get from this system, right? This system's coming down. You have this parallel economy coming up. You want to bridge your way from this system into the new one and try to get out of this thing as unscathed as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And today happens to be the activation day for ISO 222 banking protocol, which is really the biggest thing that's happened to money in the past 50 years. I mean, the old rails are basically all going away. And you mentioned XRP. Certainly, I'm very, very bullish on that. I talk to my audience quite a bit. But there is a lot of volatility as far as cryptocurrency is concerned. So I think there's two different types of investments here. There's, gold and silver, which essentially are going to be the backbone of this new economy, that are great stores of wealth, and they're going to continue to increase as time goes on. Whereas crypto, I happen to think that the ISO coins are all going to do very well. And I personally, not financial advice because I'm not a professional like you are, but I advise folks to be basically be in both. You want gold and silver. Certainly the XRP, XLM, those are great investments. But we're here today primarily to talk about, as you know, precious metals. And this is, I think, the biggest no-brainer out there, just in terms of where you want to put your money. You mentioned Venezuela and that whole situation unfolding. I agree that this is going to be really clean and swift. I of the opinion, as you know, that most of the things that we're being subjected to have basically already happened, or there's still maybe some kinetic elements to it, but that the deals have essentially already been made, and this is part of the mop-up operation we're seeing in this third phase. I kind of look at the past 8 years or so as being kind of three separate acts in this drama. Like, we had Trump's first term, where you got rid of most of the hidden elites behind the scenes, the top tier of the cabal. And then, of course, we had the fake Biden years, where there was basically the mid-level controllers were all taken off the chessboard, replaced with actors, people in mass, or people who have been put under submission. But here we are in Trump's third term, as we know. And what's happening is that the lower tier of the cabal, which is by far the largest amount of people, right? Everybody from the mainstream media people to Wall Street to the all the criminal networks, like the trafficking rings, the child trafficking rings, the drug trafficking rings, are being all swept up. So we're talking about millions and millions of people that need to be dealt with in this third phase. So it's kind of like a kinetic slash I guess you could say, a kayfabe situation going on here, where we've got lots of different things that are scripted, but there's also a lot of real stuff that's happening as well. And I happen to think that Maduro has already made deals with the white hats behind the scenes to essentially, go through this theater, but allow the military to go in there and to clean up all of that stuff that's happening as far as fentanyl goes, et cetera. So
it makes me almost wonder, like, take an Eric Swalwell, for example, or an Adam Schiff. If Trump left those guys in place just to have their world close in on them, right? I mean, I can't stand. I mean, I look at what this guy Swalwell's saying. I mean, this guy is just the worst of the worst, and it seems like he's genuinely real. It seems like he's really there to, like, he really believes that there's going to be some comeback for these guys. Right, which would explain that video with them saying, the military, don't follow orders, don't follow, illegal orders. I mean, that was a blatantly seditious, treasonous video. But I love the fact that Trump came out and actually said, hey, this is punishable by death. These people should be put to death. I love that.
Yep. No, I agree. And, who knows? It's impossible to tell with certain characters on the chessboard. Are these the real ones, or are they replacements? That's where it gets really murky, because there are certain aspects of the operation we can very clearly see, like with fake Biden. We knew that wasn't the real Joe Biden. With Hillary, and there are, just so many examples of individuals that we know are not the original. But with people like Swalwell and Schiff, you make a good point. I mean, a lot of these characters might have been left on the chessboard in order to sort of accentuate this drama toward the end. But that whole situation with the video, I happen to think plays right into exactly where the White Hats want this to go. I mean, this is an exposure operation. They're showing the people who these characters really are and what they're really all about. And as we know, we're building toward the climax of the movie, which I anticipate is going to involve basically the illusion that they're trying to ramp up this this narrative for civil war and sedition and all of these things, possibly coupled with false flags as we get deeper into the exposure operation. We've got the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which is going to be a major trigger. We've got Israel, which is the central question right now. Is pretty much the illusion. I did a show the other day talking about the illusion of the division that we're seeing in order to really isolate this topic. And we know that Q told us that Israel is being saved for last. So there's a lot of stuff happening on the chessboard right now. I think it's very exciting. What was your take on Marjorie Taylor Greene stepping down? Because a lot of folks, I mean, that actually just happened yesterday, and people have been having various different reactions to it. I'm curious, what was your take on that?
I mean, I look at it as just part of the movie, right? I don't really, when I see stuff like this, I kind of remind me of Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz stepping down and doing something else, right? Mm-hmm. It almost just, I don't really think about it. This stuff's pretty meaningless to me. I mean, what's your take? I don't really have an opinion.
I think what's interesting about it is that, you mentioned Matt Gaetz, you mentioned I mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then we've got a lot of other big time personalities out there like Candace Owens and even Nick Fuentes, who's obviously a very controversial character who is recently sort of highlighted by Tucker Carlson, and President Trump spoke about him, basically said, I'm not going to condemn him for having this guy on. The people need to decide for themselves, get the word out, etc. So the way I see it is that Trump is using people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Tucker Carlson, etc., to highlight the central issue that he can't actually touch right now, which is Israel being in control of American politics. Even though I think it's all an illusion at this point, the whole idea is that they need to gradually bring this out into the light as a part of the movie is exposing the central problem that our government has been pretty much controlled by Israel now for decades. There's a reason why they've all got dual citizenship. There's a reason why they're all talking about Israel constantly, and there's this huge debate going on within the I would say on two different levels within the conservative movement, but also within the wider political spectrum on both the left and the right. Of course, they're characterizing this as the far left and the far right are obsessing about this Israel issue, and Trump is sort of appearing in the middle as if he's he's supporting Israel, but he's also been very critical of Netanyahu at certain points. But the way I see it is they're using the White Hats are using these Q operatives in order to highlight this issue. In it has multiple different layers to it. Obviously, there's the so-called war going on in Gaza, or at this point supposedly it's not going on, but I happen to think that was all wag the dog. But we've also got the Epstein issue as well. So it seems to me like the conversation about Israel is the focal point right now. And even though Trump is saying, oh, we need to focus on all these other things, what we're seeing in the narrative space, to me, is what ultimately matters, is the issues that aren't going away.
Right.
And as time goes on, the reputation of Israel gets worse and worse. I actually just saw a statistic. I think it was a Pew Research poll, if I'm not mistaken here. Yeah, Pew Research poll that 59% of Americans now have an unfavorable view of the Israeli government. And that is
a big number.
That's a pretty big number there. I mean, that's a sizable majority of the American people. And when you go back to, even a year ago, even less than a year ago, it's been gradually going down ever since 10/7. And that really was the trigger point, I guess you could say, to the beginning of starting to expose Israel, expose Netanyahu, and bring this central problem to the attention of the American people, because that's what everybody's talking about right now. People are feeling a sense of betrayal the normies out there who don't understand the Q operation, don't understand what exactly is going on here, they're feeling this major sense of betrayal because here we are at the end of November, and so much of Trump's agenda really has been basically stalled up until this point. Like that's why he keeps talking about the filibuster, terminating the filibuster, and so on. But the overriding question seems to be that, or debate seems to be that, Israel and the Zionists seem to be in control of this whole MAGA movement and this kind of this fissure that Marjorie Taylor Greene represented, which is like Israel first or America first. And you recall that going back to 2016, that was Trump's mantra. It's like America first, America first. But people are seeing the optics of, well, it seems as if Israel is coming first here, and they're the ones that are actually calling the shots and puppeteering the Trump administration. Those are the optics that are being presented. But I think the reality is quite different, that they're using, like I said, these highly controversial characters to highlight this issue. And as time goes on, this becomes the dominant narrative. This is what everybody seems to be talking about right now. So how they're going
to... I believe in the April of 1999 George magazine, there was an article with the wife of the guy who came before President Bibi Netanyahu. He was the leader of Israel, and she basically insinuates that he was assassinated so that Netanyahu could take his place.
Barack,
so this stuff was actually in the George magazines in the 1990s.
Rabin, yeah.
Rabin. That's right.
Yep. And, we're going to have to see where it goes from here. But a lot of people it's interesting because there are so many folks out there who have such strong opinions. Like people are saying, oh, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's a traitor and she turned her back on Trump. And she's being forced out of Congress because he threatened to primary her. He called her a traitor. All of these things. And on the surface, that's the way it looks. But I don't think that's actually the reality. I think that Marjorie Taylor Greene has been a Q operative all along. And she's played her role brilliantly to highlight these two major issues that aren't going away, that of course are intertwined, which is Israel actually in control of America, or are Americans in control of America?
Right.
And then of course the question of Epstein. How is it that we still haven't gotten all of these files at this point? Why all the contradictions? It appears as if they're hiding something. They're trying to stall justice. There's a big spotlight on Pam Bondi now because of course Epstein, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which this kind of surprised me. It was no shock that it passed the House, and the Democrats voted unanimously in favor of it, which is kind of brilliant in and of itself. Because of course, they didn't even mention it while Biden was the president, but now all of a sudden, because they think Trump might be implicated, they're pushing for it again. I think this is all fake. It's all an illusion. But it sailed through the Senate, which really did kind of surprise me. I thought that there might be some holdup there. So it literally passed the House the very next day, sailed through the Senate, and then the day after that, Trump signed it. But there's this provision in there which essentially says that redactions are up to the Attorney General, whether in terms of ongoing investigations or national security. And we know that historically, that's the reason. Those are the things that they hide behind in order to prevent this information from coming out. So there's also this big question mark around Pam Bondi and also Kash Patel as to, are they going to actually release this information? Is it going to be a nothing burger? Where this is going to go. So,
well, they were investigating, I believe it was Adam Schiff, and they had found, whatever on Adam Schiff. And now the DOJ is going after the people that found the stuff on Adam Schiff instead. Mm-hmm. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
So you can see that clearly there's problems in the DOJ. There's still swamp material in that DOJ. It may not even be Pam Bondi. It could be the people around her. Who the heck knows? But it's really, I think it's putting the spotlight on the DOJ and these different people there. And what's going on there? Why are they redacting files? Why are they sending out a file that had, Virginia Giuffre's name redacted? Meanwhile, the file came out in 2011, completely declassified. Right. So what games are these people playing over at the DOJ?
Well, that I believe was to create the illusion that Trump is exposed in the files.
Right.
And any of us who have been paying attention know that that black line across her name, it was like they didn't even need to bother. That information already came out, and it's been well documented that Trump was never implicated in any wrongdoing. In fact, Giuffre mentioned that multiple times, that Trump never did anything inappropriate and so forth. But even logic would tell you that if there was any question about whether or not Trump was involved in these, Epstein-like activities, this stuff would have come on. This stuff would have come out a long, long time
We
ago.
come out in 2015.
Yeah, he wouldn't have made it down the escalator because they knew, first of all, they knew that the deep state knew he was an existential threat to their power structure. And I don't think that they would have hesitated for a moment, even if it meant burning other members of the deep state in the process to take Trump down, that they would have hesitated to do that. Because I mean, I think it's fairly obvious that if this guy, if Epstein had anything on him, we would have found out a long, long time ago. So
Yeah, it's Casino Royale. We're playing for everything, right? They would never have let Trump do anything or even get close to taking power. And what's funny is, they came out with the whole Russia collusion. What did they end up with? They ended up in high treason. So really, I think we just need to get everybody on the same page, see who these people really are, and start following through with okay, high treason carries the punishment of death. Let's start putting some people to death.
Well, that's really what it comes down to, right? Is that everybody's super frustrated out there. And I would say even people who are, in our camp, that there's a level of frustration, obviously, that we haven't seen the major arrests. We haven't seen anybody be executed. I do believe that that's coming in the not too distant future, but still in all, a lot of discontent over this. And I think that's really what this is all about. It's all about building up this drama, not just for drama purposes, like not because it's entertaining, right? That's not really the point, but rather the whole objective is to piss people off and to get people asking questions and get people demanding. I mean, the more this information comes out, the more they're dangling this carrot in front of everybody in different forms, the more people are saying, well, why is nothing being done? And starting to really engage at a level that they've never had before.
Well, this is my case. Exactly right. This is my case for the financial collapse, is that we need something that's going to piss people off. And unfortunately, a lot of these things, it just doesn't piss people off, right? They see this stuff and it either goes over their head, they just don't know, right? They're just completely oblivious to it. This is why I think you need to hit people in the pocketbook, where they see their IRA, 401k, their checking, their savings go to zero. And they're going to sit there, and that's what's going to wake people up. I mean, no one complained about Joe Biden until gas prices hit $6 and $7 a gallon, right? And the guy was a bumbling idiot, right? Obviously, it wasn't him, right? We know the story there. But the idea is, this is my case for why there needs to be something to happen in the financial system. And this is why this is what I tell people, like, hey, this is why you need gold and silver. It's not that gold and silver is so great or such a great investment. I mean, generally speaking, I'll be the first one to say they're not a great investment. But right now, it's your really one of your only bridges to the new system. And I think Trump's going to have to let some type of financial event play out here in the near future where, yeah, people are going to take a loss. I mean, the future is going to be bright. I mean, we're probably all going to be getting checks from the sovereign wealth fund, right, as we sell our resources. It's going to be beautiful. The future is great, right? The best is yet to come, as Trump would say. But this is my case for why people really need to get out of the markets, get out of the system. And really, it's not a hedge against inflation, as the news station put it. Gold is not a hedge against inflation. It's a hedge against the system itself.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. I think, and I've been saying this for a long time, that there's been a lot of speculation about what is it, first of all, what's going to be the storm itself? What does that really mean? And to put an even finer point on it, what is it going to take to really wake people up, to really grab people's attention? And I think that as time has gone on, especially over the past year, I think I certainly make the argument that more and more people are engaged, more and more people are paying attention to the core issues. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there's no denying that there are a lot of people out there who really don't pay attention. As much as we're engaged and we're following all the events that are happening, there are a great number of people out there who just aren't. And they're not going to unless and until something happens that dramatically impacts their life. And
Exactly.
that's where the economic theater of the war comes in, because, regardless of whether or not you care about the fact that the CDC just came out and said, well, it turns out that we can't say with any certainty that vaccines don't cause autism. They might. They notice how they're getting closer and closer to the real truth, but they're gradually rolling this out. But there are some people out there who that may not affect them. There are other people out there who, they see that they may hear about the corruption. They may hear about, you know, everything that we just mentioned with Israel, or they may uh, not really care all that much about mass deportations, illegal immigration, all of these things. It's just kind of like they're just kind of maintaining, they're going through their lives. And the only thing that's really going to affect them is going to be some sort of a major economic shock. And what form that's going to come in and when it's going to come, I'm not exactly certain, but I don't think any of us are. But we can all see and recognize that this is part of what needs to happen, first of all, in order to wake people up, but also as a way to roll out the new economic system. I think that we're in the process of that right now, but I anticipate that there's probably going to be an event or series of events that's going to do exactly what you just described, because that's the only thing that's going to reach people. And this whole operation is about making sure that no matter where people are at in terms of their consciousness, what they're thinking about, they need to weave things in to this operation in order to grab the attention and force people to actually care about what's going on in the world. That's really what the whole purpose of getting to the precipice is all about. Now, the precipice, what does that mean? Well, that's the point where people are no longer just simply spectating, but they're actually willing to participate and get involved and to pay attention to what's happening in the world. That's really the Great Awakening. And then from there, of course, there are various different aspects of disclosure as well. I personally think that the big one is going to be once all of this Epstein stuff comes out. And I think, honestly, I think two things that are going to affect everyone, which is money and crimes against humanity. Ultimately, those two things are going to be the main drivers, because the rest of the stuff you can kind of put into a partisan politics category, and people sort of take sides on those. But the issues that affect everyone, everybody's affected by the financial system on one level or another. And as far as crimes against humanity, I think that cuts right through any sort of partisan politics. Anybody who has a conscience, once they start to realize, what these people were up to, we're not just talking about, it's bad enough that there were elites down there, engaging in sex with underage girls and things along those lines. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg. We're talking about things that I don't even like to mention, quite frankly. But the rape of babies, satanic ritual abuse, and it just gets worse and worse from there. And I do believe that that's going to be the catalyst that's going to, those two things in tandem, especially, that are going to wake everybody up, especially now that they're not only have they passed the Epstein File Transparency Act, but they're also going after his financial records. And once that thread gets pulled, and it's going to expose the entire financial system in terms of how corrupt and evil that.
Well, it's like the Brunson case, right? Lloyd Brunson's a good friend of mine. He actually stayed at my house maybe a month or two ago, stayed with me for a couple of days. And, he's explaining to me how, his case, what he's really looking for is he's looking for discovery, right? Because in discovery, what you basically have is once you get treason, right? Treason is a $10,000 fine and you can never hold office again. Okay. Not that big. It's a big deal, but it's not that big a deal. High treason is the stuff that's punishable by death. What he's essentially doing is he's trying to get through the courts so that once he gets these people out of office, 95% of Congress, and I think it will eventually go. I think when we're on the brink of whatever it is, right, the brink of just everybody just wanting these people gone with a stroke of a pen, sign off on the Brunson case, boom, 95% of Congress goes. In discovery, what he really wants, he wants their communications. He wants to see that, this person, this politician was talking to this group over here and say, yeah, certify the election, just go with it, sign off on it. Well, the money will be in the, your Cayman Island accounts in 24 hours, $10 million or whatever it is. He's looking for that discovery so that you're exactly right. When they find these records and they start looking at this stuff, we'll be able to show the American people, hey, this is what, this politician did. This is what this politician did. We'll have them on record.
Yeah.
In the highest level of criminality possible.
I haven't heard about the Brunsons. I remember talking about that a while back, but it almost seemed to me like that whole thing just kind of faded. What's the status on that? Because since
it's alive and well. As a matter of fact, Jesse, do you have any words? You want to come on and say some stuff? So So I'm here with my friend Jesse,
Okay.
one of the most brilliant minds out there. I won't get into the stuff we're working on. He's working on some very. One of these days we'll have Jesse come on the show. But as far as the Brunson case, I mean, basically he's being pushed up to a different level of the courts, right? And he's got everything he needs. And this is a little bit above my pay grade, right? My legal part of my legalese, but he's essentially getting pushed up to another area of the courts, and he's running into these corrupt judges where they say, "Oh, you're really not qualified to be down here," and he pushes him back down. Yet he has got everything he needs to be in this specific court up here, and they keep pushing it back down. They keep pushing back, and it's just he's running into corrupt judges. Is what it really is.
More judicial, yeah.
Yeah, so they're basically playing lawfare with him right now, but the case stands. I'm telling you right now, I put it into, I think it was Chat GPT, and somebody figured out how to get real answers on Chat GPT. And essentially, the Brunson case, it's already won. It's a checkmate on the system. But the idea is that he's never going to get anywhere with these corrupt judges. So I think as we sift out these corrupt judges, we get them out of the way, you'll see that Brunson case come back into the news.
Interesting. All right. Yeah. I haven't really talked about that or heard many updates on that in a long time. But yeah, I agree with you, man. There's definitely going to be some sort of a major breaking point. But the legal roadblocks that all these corrupt judges have put up really need to be dealt with. And I also think that ties into Trump continuing to push for the filibuster, because and it also, it's kind of another layer to what I was talking about a little bit earlier in terms of the general discontent. I mean, obviously, it doesn't seem like anybody really feels as if our country's moving in the right direction on both the left and the right. For obvious reasons on the left, because they hate Trump, but even within the right, the Conservative Party, there's this massive fissure right now. And, some people are saying, oh, we need to trust Trump no matter what he's doing and so forth, and there's kind of this other wing that's saying, well, there seems to be the optics of this betrayal here where, we were told that all of these things were going to happen that really haven't materialized. And again, I believe this is all part of the movie. That's all part of the illusion that's being created in order to do exactly that. But that's why he keeps talking about the filibuster, because you think about it. I mean, back in January, there was this torrent of executive orders, all of these things that, Trump laid out within the first couple of weeks of his presidency. But in essence, in order for them to really have teeth, they have to go through Congress. They have to be codified into law. And the filibuster has prevented that from happening. Right. So like all of these policy initiatives that he wants to get through have been stalled. Right. And it's been a combination really of the filibuster in the Senate and also all of these corrupt judges. And I think that what they're doing, the White Hats are showing the American people that this is what happens in our political system, regardless of who you elect. Nothing ever really seems to materialize because there's always this kind of this partisan game that goes on in the Senate and to a degree within the House as well. But the filibuster is really the main thing. And then, of course, you've got all of these corrupt judges who put up these roadblocks and prevent the policy initiatives from moving forward. And indeed, they prevent the wheels of justice from getting us to where we need to be. So that's kind of where I see things right now. There's this massive divide, really, the optics of division. But if you scratch the surface and you go a little bit deeper, you can see that people are actually on core principles. They're starting to unite in the sense that people are recognizing why the system is so broken. People have different ideas about, who's responsible for it. But the reality of the matter is that that's really the unifying factor, that the White Hats are trying to galvanize the people around this idea of like, this is why nothing ever gets accomplished. We've got all of this corruption within the government. And even when the American people vote in a landslide victory and they mandate a certain set of policies for moving forward, it only takes a handful of corrupt people, whether they be judges, whether they be senators or congressmen, to prevent the will of the people from moving forward. And that's ultimately, I think, what they're driving at, is they're trying to get people to recognize that this is the problem, right? And then of course,
they have judges trying to block Trump from deporting, MS-13 gang members. I mean, it's absurd,
right? And
right?
This is what they've been showing people. Yeah,
they're showing us.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you try to tell people, oh, well, this is the problem. They're just going to brush it off. They're not going to pay any attention.
Maryland man.
The Maryland man. You're right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we've seen, I mean, hasn't that really been one of the main themes of 2025 is just judicial tyranny? these
It's
activist judges, these rogue judges.
100%.
I mean, we're hearing about
100%.
it constantly.
I feel like part of it is a movie, like we are living in that simulated movie, but we are really legitimately running into these corrupt judges, right? These people are legitimately there that we have to get around. And there's no moving forward until really it's our judicial system that's completely backwards that needs to be cleaned up. If we had real judges and real elections, this country would look totally different.
Well, exactly. And I agree with you that there are, and this is you hear me talk about the movie and saying the illusion and all these things, but I'm also very clear to point out that I think it's a hybrid situation, that the white hats are in control, but that doesn't mean that every single person, especially the lower tier, the top tier, the middle tier, I think that these people have been removed. And that's why the white hats are in control, and they're able to puppeteer everything that's happening on the lower level,
right,
to paint this picture and to show people. That's what I refer to as the movie. But again, are there corrupt judges that are still out there and operating? Absolutely. Are there corrupt politicians that are still operating? Yeah, I would say that a lot of them are still there. Are there, drugs that cartels that still need to be dealt with? Absolutely. So there are a lot of real issues that are being tied into this whole thing, and that's ultimately the way that I've described it. Really,
I think the number one issue right now is Trump getting Tina Peters out of prison.
Okay.
That Trump's got to get in there. I mean, there was some talk about him sending in the Marines to literally physically remove her out of there. And I say, I think he's got to start doing things that are, who cares what the media says? Who cares what anybody says? Tina Peters is one of our most important, but she's got the evidence of the voter fraud in the machines. She literally found it. That's why she's in prison. So he's got to get her out of prison like yesterday, because I don't know if you know, but she's in there, basically probably her cancer's back. She's got lung cancer, or had lung cancer. She had part of her lung removed, never smoked a cigarette in her life. And, here she is, 70 some odd years old, Gold Star mom, and she's sitting in a freaking prison cell where the temperatures that she's sleeping in are 40 degrees at night.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of talk about that. Do you know of anyone who actually is gone to prison and visited her, or can corroborate that?
Well, a good friend of mine is Joe Altman. Joe Altman is effectively paying all her bills. Joe's up in Denver. I just had lunch with Joe 3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's there. She's in there. I don't think it's some simulation or anything like. She's there.
You're going to follow her every week.
Was that?
You're going to follow visit her every week.
Yeah, he and Apollo visit her pretty much every week at the prison.
Really?
So we know for a fact that she's in there, and Trump's got to. I don't care what Trump's got to do, but he's got to get her the F out of there. I don't know if you know her background, but I mean,
I know the story. Yeah, I know the story.
Her husband had dementia. He was living in a nursing home, and they went over to her husband with dementia, some shadowy people, and got him to sign over the deed of his house.
Really?
Just insane. It's beyond insane what they've done to that woman. And all she did was she did her job as the county clerk. We saw the anomalies. She got the data out of the machine, which is her job to do, and they put her in prison for it to make an example out of her.
Right. Yeah, well, that was always the narrative that I had heard, but I had questioned whether or not that was real. But you seem to be very convinced that it is.
Oh yeah, Apollo, who worked with Joe Altman, they don't do the show anymore, but they're obviously friends. They visit her every week at the prison. And Joe, Joe's a very, he's a pretty successful guy. He pays all our bills.
Personally, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And I've spoken to Tina. I spoke to her maybe about a year or two ago, probably about 2 years ago. I spoke to her one-on-one, and that was when she was suspecting that was when they first were starting to go after her. But then they postponed the case, and there's a bunch of stuff, and then eventually, they put her in the slammer.
Well, yeah, to me, that's very disturbing, though, that you wouldn't that because the way I would look at that would be to think that it's that's part of the scene in the movie. But for people like you who can say, well, no, actually, we know for a fact that she's in there, then raises kind of some questions about, well, how is it possible that they've allowed this to go on for this long? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, that's why we can't always say oh, this is just a movie and everything's playing out. I think a lot of it is, and I totally agree with that. I'm totally on that same page. but there are some people suffering. There are some people that, J6 prisoners, not anymore, but there was a lot of J6 prisoners that were legitimately in prison that, they had to say they're casualties of war, and we just don't want to see Tina become a casualty of war. So, I mean, yeah, there's people really suffering, really going through it for the mission. It is what it is. But
I just have a really difficult time. I'm not questioning, what you're saying. What I'm having a difficult time is that why would Donald Trump leave this woman to rot in prison for all of this time? It just doesn't seem to really add up.
right, because I guess there's the question of, can the federal government come in and give a pardon? And, a lot of people say, no, well, he can't do it because it's a state crime or whatever. I think he can, and I think he should just do what's right. I don't care what the optics look like. I know it'll be a media feeding frenzy for them. Oh, Trump's taking out his political allies, and then they'll rehash the case. I think it's actually a political opportunity for Trump to take her out, because then we can relitigate, okay, on a national stage, now that everybody's looking, because no Democrat out there, think of Democrat in New York, they don't know who Tina Peters is. It would be a great time to pull her out of prison, have the Marines go in there, kicking the doors, right? Kicking the doors, pull her out of a cell, bring her back to her house, right, et cetera, and then have a national conversation about, oh, what did Tina Peters find? What did she find in those Dominion servers, right? What did she find in these election rigging, whatever they were doing, right? It would be a great way to start getting into the 2020 fraud. I think it's a great political opportunity for Trump, as opposed to the opposite.
That's the way that I viewed it prior to having this conversation with you. That this whole situation with Tina is being, it's getting a lot of attention now for exactly those reasons, so that when she is released from prison and all of this stuff comes out and it creates this big spectacle, that it'll put a spotlight on election 2020. We know that. I mean, even Trump continues to talk about 2020. He's called for investigations. I mean, she was out in, was it Arizona? Tina Peters? I can't remember.
No, Tina was in County, Colorado.
In Colorado, right? Okay,
like border to Utah.
Right. So, but Trump is calling for investigations into Fulton County in Georgia. He continues to bring up the 2020 election, leading us to believe that this is not over yet. And that's part of the reason why I saw Tina Peters in that whole scenario playing a role in that. But I guess from my perspective, and this is, we all have our own different perspectives on it. So like if I actually personally knew somebody who could corroborate that she's actually in prison and she's like rotting in jail and she's got cancer and all of this stuff, then I would probably view it from a different lens. But not having that personal connection with anybody, I always tend to look at that with a little bit of skepticism and wonder, because to me, it just doesn't add up. I mean, if Trump as the president can pardon anybody, he can get any, he can pull any string that he wants to, as you indicated. Why would he allow an individual like this, someone who is ultimately loyal to him and, preserving all of those election results, knowing full well that he wants the truth to come out about 2020, why would he allow her to actually sit there and
exactly
prison?
And it frustrates me, because it's like, as much as we love Trump and we understand the mission and blah, 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 it's like, Trump, just get her the F out of prison. There's not, at the end of the day, the optics are going to look very good for him for doing that. Hey, saved a woman who was dying from cancer in prison. Oh, and she just so happens to have the whole key to the election fraud and the actual vote counting of these corrupt machines. I mean, it seems like a layup politically for Trump. Maybe not initially, but in the long term, it would be, I think, brilliant.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, where I get in. That's the lens that I look at it through, which is like, if it doesn't really make sense logically, then I question whether or not it's actually real. But because to me, it really doesn't add up. That Donald Trump would allow this woman, a Gold Star mom, a patriot, a woman who did her duty and preserved the election results and all of these things, that he would just sit back and allow her to rot in jail. This doesn't seem to make much sense to me.
Well, she is. Like I said, Joe Altman, who's, in my opinion, one of the big heroes behind the scenes, he's been paying her legal bills, paying all of her bills. Joe's a pretty well-off guy and a great guy, nice guy, good friend of mine. He's been telling me, he has her covered. So it's not like she's got to worry about, any expenses. It's not like you have to go donate money to her or anything like that. But, you should go on Jennifer Mack's Telegram, and she put up all the phone numbers to the different places of government that you should call and leave a message and just say, hey, I demand Tina Peters. get the hell out of prison. She's a 70-year-old cancer survivor. Look at we know about the conditions. They snuck in a thermometer so that she could actually gauge the exact temperature they're keeping her in. It's somewhere between 40 and 50 degrees every night. So
Now,
they're intentionally trying to kill her. They're basically trying to kill her.
okay, and you said that you know personally people that have been to prison and visited her?
Correct.
Have you?
I have not personally.
You haven't.
Maybe they're lying to me. I don't think Joe would lie to me.
Well, no, I'm not suggesting. I'm asking questions because to me, it's like the logic doesn't seem to really add up. I mean, the optics of it makes sense, but if this is actually happening, to me, it's inexcusable. That this woman would be allowed to rot in prison and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, we'll have to monitor that and see what happens. But yeah,
I'm hoping something soon. Something has to be done soon. I think that'll be something you'll want to watch, in your audience for that matter. I would keep up with something happening there probably the next couple of days or within the week. I would expect to see some news on that because something's got to give. Something's got to give. I sense something happening there very, very soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as you know, my point of reference for most of the optics that we've been presented with has always been, that the military intelligence apparatus is pretty incredible in terms of what they can lead people to believe, and we don't really know.
You're absolutely right.
We don't really know what's real and what's not. So it's like you hear people talk about things, but they have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of operatives out there who can do exactly that. They can create these illusions and make things appear to be
100%.
real. But, it's like, it's one of those things where it's difficult, for a person like myself or anybody else out there who's listening to the show. You get all this different information, but you don't necessarily know what's real and what's not. So that's usually the lens that I tend to look at it through. But I certainly take it very seriously. I mean, I do know you to a certain degree, and some of these individuals who are involved with this. But again, it's
hey, they hit JFK Jr. for 25 plus years. They could probably do a lot of things.
Well, right. I mean, they can pull off just about any illusion, I guess, is the point, right? So that's always the way that I interpret a lot of this stuff is like, and I'm not saying definitively like, oh, this is all BS. Like she's not really in prison. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that for everybody out there who's being barraged with all these different, with all this information, one thing that we've learned is that it's very, very easy for them to create optics and create narratives surrounding those optics in order to push
100%.
a certain agenda. And that's usually the way that I look at it. But look, I mean, if I actually, went into a prison and actually saw Tina Peters there suffering, then I would believe it with my own eyes. But short of that, it's difficult for me to, and I think probably for most folks out there to really know definitively. But again, to me, logically, it just doesn't seem to make sense.
Well, hopefully, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, logically, it doesn't really seem to make sense that Trump would keep a political ally rotting in prison, especially a Gold Star mom who did everything that she could to try to preserve the evidence of his victory. It just doesn't seem to add up, I guess.
Well, maybe she's the seam that maybe they do send in the Marines to take her out of prison, and that makes headlines, and that starts to get people under the idea that, hey, the military is going to start stepping in where there's wrongdoing. And we'll start seeing more and more of that. Maybe this is a justifiable way where Trump can sit there and say, hey, let's send in the military, and people start getting used to the idea. Oh, there's problems in South Chicago? Great. Send in the military. Oh, you have riots going on in LA? Great. Send in the military. Oh, you have problems over here? Great. Send in the military. And start getting people accustomed to the idea that the military needs to start stepping in.
Well, right, and the military has already been deployed under the auspices. Yeah, under the auspices of cleaning up the streets and violent crime and all of these sorts of things. But to me, if we were living in the real world right now, let's just put it that way, and we weren't being subjected to so much. Let's just call it optics, propaganda, whatever you want to call it. In the real world, this would have been probably one of Trump's top priorities, is to get these people, particularly somebody like Tina Peters, would be to remove her from prison, to use everything in his power to pull those strings to get her out. And here we are in late November of 2025. And even though all of this attention is being brought to the issue, it doesn't seem, I mean, I haven't even heard Trump bring it up or mention it. So to me, it's kind of like, do we really think that that's, does that make any sense? I mean,
Right.
I don't know. I have a tough time with that, but we'll have to monitor that and obviously see what happens. But I certainly hope that, let's just say that a lot of the stuff that we're being subjected to isn't the full story.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. Well, we're on the anniversary of Kennedy's death. You want to talk a little bit about
I was
President
just going
Kennedy?
to bring that up. Yeah, absolutely. So here we are. Yeah, November 22nd. So I know that we had talked about a couple weeks ago, and I mentioned the date, and you're like, oh, we can talk about that a little bit. So why don't you share some of your thoughts, because obviously so much of what we do nowadays, everything seems to revolve around what started on this date back in 1963. So what are some of your thoughts on the?
Well, I think you and your audience understand that Trump is, I think, here to accomplish what Kennedy didn't, namely taking out the CIA, right, scattering it into 1,000 pieces, or shattering into 1,000 pieces and scattering it into the wind. Kennedy understood the things that a lot of us have only recently, within the last 5-10 years, have really started to understand. I mean, I woke up in 2018 when the JFK Jr. rumors started coming around, and I find it amazing. Hey, what? I want to grab something. Hey, Jesse, he's not here. I'm gonna grab a magazine, which is like unbelievable, and I want to bring it to the audience. But
Sure.
What Kennedy wanted to do, he wanted to do a lot of things, but from an economic standpoint, he wanted to start taking power away from the Federal Reserve by starting to make silver redeemable. Right. And I think that's what you're going to start to see with Trump, is you're going to see the redemption capability of gold and silver. That's the missing part, right? We all know that we're going to gold and silver backed money. Yes. Thank you, Scott. We got Scott from TruthStream here.
Oh, what's up, buddy?
Yeah, I got a big party at the house. Anyway, he wanted to make gold and silver redeemable. And I think what Trump's going to do is he's going to finish Kennedy's legacy. He didn't have access to gold at the time, because remember, in 1960, 61, 2, and 3, gold was not, you weren't legally allowed to own gold. It was Ford that made gold legal to own in 1974, right? Gerald Ford.
Yeah, that goes back to FDR, really.
Yeah, 1933, right? The gold, right? Everybody had to turn their gold. They got paid for it, and I don't think, by the way, I get this question a lot. I don't think the government's coming out for your gold, folks. Kamala Harris won, maybe, but I don't think Trump's after your gold. I think he's encouraging it. But there's this very interesting magazine. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but this came out in 2018.
I have.
And it's weird.
I think I have seen that. Yeah.
So is his amazing untold story and secret plan to run for president. So this came out in December of 2018. What was in December 2018? D5. George Bush's funeral. So I think this actually made store shelves, which is interesting. But if you look inside, we'll go to page 13. We'll just throw that over there. Go to page 13. And you can find these. If anybody wants to pick one of these up, I can find one for you. But you can see, I don't know if you can get it there, but you see that's the George shoot.
Yep.
You can see that. There's something very interesting about that photo, though. He's an old man.
Mm. Is that like, how do they characterize that inside the magazine? Is it supposed to be like this?
The 1995 George launch, right, with the Cindy Crawford cover. If you look very carefully at that photo, he's an older guy.
Mm.
Like, he's got to be in his 50s taking that photo, right? And obviously, we know he died at 38. But I think the fact that they held the funeral on his third birthday, on the 25th, which will be Junior's 65th. It'll be 65. It tells you who these people are and how disgusting they are. But I think it's just a good, every 11/22, I always sit back and just kind of reflect on what a great president Kennedy was, and where this country would have been had we followed, what he had envisioned. And we really got to, count our lucky stars that we have somebody like Trump in office, who I think is going to take these bastards down. I think we're there. But something I'm going to have on my shelves, just for the audience. And this is just, I don't really deal in collectible stuff or anything like that. But we're bringing in a lot of 1964 Kennedy proof coins. which have become increasingly harder to find. I have a big inventory on those. So if people want them, we'll we'll get a nice price on them, etc. It's a little bit more expensive than, per ounce than your typical silver coin, but we're going to do 64 Kennedys. And if people want to pick up the 2025 Kennedys, we're going to carry those. This is inexpensive, more collectible stuff, but I just throw it out there because I think it's well worth people's time to pick up some Kennedy memorabilia, because I think in the future it's going to hold significant value. I think there's going to be a lot of nostalgia, and kind of the way I've always collected into stuff is I've collected into the nostalgia. I've collected, I look at these as clues left in time. So if anybody's interested in this stuff, I'd be happy to just either help you locate some stuff, or if you want Kennedy coins, give me a call. I'm happy to, help you out, and we can get those to people.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I listen, I mean, if Kennedy hadn't been assassinated, we certainly wouldn't be having this conversation. That's
exactly.
Sure. That changed the course of history. A lot of folks, as we know, the cabal, they had their, their tentacles in the United States very, very early on. But there was kind of, there was this golden age in a sense, in the, after the Civil War, pretty much all the way leading up to, the early part of the 20th century with the, prior to the sinking of the Titanic, the Federal Reserve, and then of course, World War I, World War II, and this push toward their new world order. But prior to that, we had this, Republican dynasty of like these hard money, constitutional guys that were, in essence, basically like, they were the MAGA of their day. But the cabal got their tentacles in, they got their people in there, they got the control of the media, they got the control of the financial system. And really, Kennedy was like the last bastion of their, I guess, their conquest of America. In a lot of ways, people see that day, back in 1963, on this day, that was when they completed their coup and got full control, essentially, over our government, over our financial system, over our media, Hollywood. I mean, it just goes on and on. But he was truly a remarkable president, and ultimately what spawned this whole modern iteration of the Q movement. I mean, a lot of people say it goes back a lot further than that. Certainly, I think there's truth to that. But ultimately, the reason that we're here, the reason why we're having this conversation and everything that we've been through, particularly over the past 8 years with Trump, traces directly back to JFK. And then, of course, there's the big question of, JFK Jr. Is he still alive? Is he going to make is he going to reveal himself? Is he, is he wearing a mask? I mean, these questions have been floated for quite some time. I haven't really talked about it in quite some time. Actually, there was a period earlier on in my podcasting journey where I was very much focused on that question. And since then, I've kind of been, gotten away from it a little bit. But in a sense, it almost ties back in to, what we're talking about with the, the movie aspect of things and what's real and what's not. If JFK Jr. is still alive and he's still, he's a part of this operation in any way, shape, or form, it kind of raises, again, those types of questions about, even with regard to Tina Peters, are they going to allow these individuals to just to rot away and be victims of the deep state for optics purposes? It's like that's where it kind of gets difficult for me to reconcile those things. I know we already kind of moved on from that, but I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from. Is I look at the big picture and I think, if the good guys are in control, as is the basic foundation of our analysis, and I think you and I agree on that fundamentally. There are some certain questions that get very difficult to answer along those lines.
Oh, no doubt. And we know it's a movie. How do we know it's a movie? Because what did Trump say in Art of the Deal? What did he say he wanted to be when he grew up? He wanted to be a movie director.
Right.
That was his passion. Is he wanted to be a movie director. What was JFK Jr.? He was an actor. He's actually a really good actor. Right. He actually used to dress up to avoid the paparazzi. He would get into disguises even back then.
Yep.
So I think we absolutely are 100% watching a movie here. Yeah. And, I think the funniest part about it is, Trump wants to be the best at everything, right? He wants to be number one at everything he does. Well, Trump's going to have the highest grossing movie in human history when this is all said and done.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And he continually mentions central casting over and over and over. And we could sit here for 3 hours and we could talk about the comms pointing in that direction. I mean, heck, he just met with Mamdani. Okay, talk about central casting in the Oval Office. And he's throwing around the 17s, talking about his poll numbers. Well, first he was like 1%, then he was at 3%, then he went up to 7%, but then he got to 17%. And I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
he does that over and over and over and over again. And so you have to ask yourself, if we're watching a movie and this is all central casting and all of these things, then on the flip side of the coin, where again, where these optics appear to be very real, and we know that the military has the capability. I mean, it's not like they're just like shooting from the hip here, and they haven't like really actually thought about how they're going to present all of these illusions to the public. Obviously, it's airtight in terms of what they can lead people to believe. So if we're watching a movie and the good guys are in control, and you got Trump and potentially JFK Jr. in the background, and all of these things, and we're continually talking about central casting in the movie and the comms and the deltas and the cube drops and all of these things that seem to align with that narrative, then it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense that real good people would be, left to rot and to suffer along the way, the process of this journey. So, we'll have to see. I mean, I continually wonder about that, and it's obviously a very complex knot that they've tied up here. Even in terms of Trump, I mean, optically, he's very much aligned with Israel and the Zionists, and you've got all of these questions surrounding Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, and it really not just them, but even RFK and Kristi Noem. It's like all they're talking about, seemingly is like making anti-Semitism and, like this major issue. They keep putting that right in front of everybody. And you got to wonder, I mean, we know that, I mean, at least I know that we're watching a movie, but how are they going to unravel all of these complex knots that they've tied up in terms of the narratives that they're presenting to people?
Well, they're going to have to come out with a movie so that everybody goes to the theater, and everybody will get into the movie theater, and you'll be able to see a presentation, right? Because that's how people communicate, and that's probably the easiest way for people to do it, right? Look at what they do with Netflix, the messaging they put out with TV shows and movies, right? We're going to do the same thing.
Yeah. Now, I personally think that, I mean, Q told us the ending won't be for everyone. The choice to know will be yours, and some people interpret that as well. Only the folks who really who are in the know are going to understand at the end of the day everything that happened. I actually think that there's going to come a time in the not too distant future when all of these things come out, where we're going to have to transition out of the movie and back into reality. And the only way to really effectively do that is to level with the people. To a certain degree, you can understand that there are going to be aspects of the operation that are never going to see the light of day, or at least probably not in our lifetime. Maybe eventually more of these truths will come out. But in terms of how the military had to take people out behind the scenes, and a lot of the things that we believe have occurred in terms of removing the cabal from power, I don't expect that all of those details are necessarily going to come out. But in order for the Great Awakening to really be the Great Awakening, there has to be a revelation of truth to the people, and it's not just simply about exposing what the bad people did, because some people leave it there and they say, well, they're going to expose all of these things. We're going to get the disclosure. We're going to get the justice and all that. I think that's absolutely true. But to me, that's only one part of it. In other words, if the premise is correct, that ever since the assassination of JFK, that there's been a group of military white hats behind the scenes who have been gradually building up to this incredible moment in history, that we're watching the old guard being torn down, and we're coming out of the darkness and into the light. If this is really true, that this has been going on now for decades, then you're not going to really, I wouldn't really classify it as the Great Awakening if that is not revealed to the people. That how they decide they're going to package it and present it is one thing. But I do think that there has to be some sort of a revelation along those lines, that yes, there has been this, this sting operation that's been going on for a very long time. That the military has been very active behind the scenes and so forth in terms of bringing these people down. They're leading us to believe that this is all happening organically. But I don't think that, given how complex it's become, that they can really, put a continue to, to
Agreed.
play that cloak and dagger game and expect that people, as all of this comes out, that people are going to be awakened, truly awakened to the realities of the world, unless they wind down the movie and they present the real truth to the people. And there's been a big debate about that. So I don't know.
And for starters, they could start with human evolution. We're not a product of the ape. You know what I mean? We didn't derive from apes. It's absurd, right? So it'll be interesting to see where we came from. I think of Prometheus, the movie, right? If you've ever seen Prometheus, I think they were telling us that we're from some other planet, right? Some other place in the universe. Who the heck knows? But we certainly didn't evolve from apes. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Kennedy said that we originally were water creatures because we have the same exact amount of salt in our blood, same exact amount of salt as the ocean has.
Yeah.
So for starters, that might be a good thing to disclose to the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been subjected to basically nothing but lies our entire life. I mean, think about it. Everything that you learned in school, all the things that you're taught, it's like it's constructed on this false foundation. And I believe that ultimately that the Great Awakening isn't just simply about, well, we had these evil people that were trying to, to kill us all off. But ultimately, like you were hinting at there, who we really are, where we really came from, and what was really done, and how the truth was able to come out of all of this. There needs to be some clarity for folks out there that, and who knows when that's going to happen and to what degree it's going to happen, but they're using, and I've talked about this a lot, it's very paradoxical in a sense, because they're using all of these psyops which are ultimately deception, and maybe for a good purpose, but it's still a form of deception. It's like if we're watching things unfold that are being manufactured that aren't really actually real in the truest sense, they're using deception to prepare people to accept the truth, right? And so it's like this whole movie aspect needs to go away at a certain point in time, and I'm very curious about how they're going to unravel that. It's going to be very interesting to watch.
I think the most interesting thing will be our connection to God, right? Because they say that the vaccines took out your ability to connect to God.
Yeah, our DNA, absolutely.
Right. So, and obviously, fluoride, for example, and all these different things that they've tried to, disrupt your pineal gland. Sorry, the puppy's getting in the way.
Usually my cat photo bombs me. He's sleeping on.
River's just walking around here, getting big. But before we go, I just also want to say we just set up a lot of our social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If people want to go on and give us a follow, we're going to do a giveaway. We're going to give out 10 proof 64 Kennedys, and then we'll do another 10 1-ounce silver American Eagles. Just, give us a follow and then maybe a comment or a like or something like that. But you can just look us up, Verity Metals, right, on Instagram, on Twitter, and Facebook. And we'll announce the winners maybe on the next show.
Yeah, well, why don't you send me the links, and I'll put the links in the description.
Yeah, you can do that right now. Sure,
folks. So yeah, you can click on those links and give Matt a follow. So in closing, I know we talked about a lot of things, and that's normally what we do. We just kind of go off the cuff here and we share ideas about where we're at. But I wanted to come back and circle back to where we began tonight, which was talking about precious metals and ultimately what Matt does. So let me go ahead and bring up the website. This is my landing page. Of course, I'm affiliated with Matt's company, veritymetals.com/patriot. And that link is going to be right in the description there. And this will take you to the landing page. And I also have a phone number. A lot of folks, I think, they may want to kick the tires a little bit and check out the website, but when it comes down to it, they really just want to have a conversation. So why don't you talk a little bit about Verity, about what you do differently, and what folks can expect if they go to the website and pick up the phone to give you a call.
Yeah, and let me preface it by starting out with the gold and silver industry is a pretty nasty business when you deal with the companies that are in this space. It's totally unregulated. The physical market is, right? If the CFTC governs the paper markets of gold and silver, not the physical, right? So what winds up happening is, you see on a lot of these podcasts, you see in Patriot podcasts, which is unfortunate, you see some of these, I'm not going to name companies, I don't want to get a lawsuit, but you see a lot of these companies out of places like Los Angeles, And the horror stories I can show you. I can show people. It's disgusting. They're charging these insane commissions. I mean, I've seen, $500,000 retirement accounts go down to 200,000 right the day they've done business with some of these gold companies out there. I would say, if you're interested in gold and silver, give us a call or go to a local shop. We're an actual brick and mortar gold shop. We're not a call center. You're going to get me on the phone if you do call, right? And you have the ability to schedule consultations, right? You have a little calendar option that just puts it right in my Google Calendar, makes it really easy for both of us. We can do a Zoom call. But yeah, I basically, I don't charge the commissions, not even close to what these people charge on IRAs and 401ks. And I have the option of self-storage. So if you want to have your IRA gold or IRA silver sent to you, we can absolutely do that. We're the only company that I know of in the industry that's doing that.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
That's huge. That's huge. Some states like Florida, Tennessee, I haven't seen any depositories down there. So depending where you are in the country, if you want to take possession of your gold and silver and store it at a local depository close to you, it's not always available. But if you want to store it yourself, you're really not supposed to do it. And I can talk more with you about it on a personal phone call. You're really not supposed to store it yourself. But put it this way, I'm not telling anybody. So that's up to that. I can't advise it, right? Because I'm not a financial advisor. But if that's something you want to do, we can make that possible for you. And just, getting overall a great deal on the gold and silver itself, but also just, good insights on products. I generally recommend United States minted coin, right? It's a little bit more expensive than, let's say, a basic bar or a basic silver round or gold round, but you get a better resale on it, right? So I try to get people, if we're going back to a gold standard, right, and gold and silver backed money, you probably want to have United States minted coinage because that'll plug you directly into a constitutional system. Right. So I really try to advise, when people call me up, I really try to give them advice. It's like, what would I do? Right? I talk to them as if it's me. And as I always tell people, it's like, I don't want your grandmother's retirement money. We're happy to take our little fee and keep it moving. So avoid these gold companies, these big gold conglomerates. You see them advertised everywhere. I can tell you, I know all about these places. I have friends that worked at some of these places. I know all their dirty tricks. And I know everything about them. We'll do a fabulous job for people. This is the Patriot community. These are people that want to deal with people that are going to take care of them, not, screw them over in the end. That's us. I'm a viewer of a lot of shows, including yours, just like everybody else here. I want to do a fabulous job. And it's a very hands-on process for me. And I really appreciate, just by the way, while we're on it, I really appreciate everybody who's called in, who's done business with us. We're really grateful. You can see some reviews on our website, on our Google page. You'll see we do a fabulous job for people. And, we want to make you look good, Patriots. So just keep that in mind.
That's ultimately why I decided to go in this direction and to work with you, because ultimately I want the best for my audience. And, it's been a learning experience for me as well, because when I started learning about gold and silver, I didn't really know the ins and outs. I certainly don't know them at the level that you do as far as, how the market works and so forth. But there is a lot of unregulated aspects to this that allow people to get taken advantage of. And that's ultimately not what I want for my audience. I want my audience to feel good about, being inspired to contact someone and ultimately feel like they're getting a good deal. They're being taken care of. They're not being manipulated and so forth. So even though a lot of this stuff is, this stuff goes on, like you talked about, it was definitely something that, when I started to learn more about the different options that folks have available to them, it became very clear to me that you were right up at the top of that list of people who have integrity, who aren't looking to rip people off, who really are trying to do the best for the Patriot community out there. And as you said, there have been so many people already. We've only done a few shows together. There have been a lot of folks out there who have reached out to you, and I've gotten great feedback. So that makes me feel good as well. That's ultimately what I'm aiming at. So make sure that you guys check out the landing page. Make sure you, and honestly, just give Matt a call, because, you'll have a conversation much like we're having right now.
We're family, man. We're family. That's what it comes down to. We're soul family, all of us.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And he'll be able to answer all your questions. He's a straight shooter, as I'm sure you can tell. And, that's the business model that I admire so much is, it's like everybody who gets into any type of business, of course, you're trying to make money, you're trying to earn a living and all that. That goes without saying, but there's a difference between that and, using, smoke and mirrors to essentially maximize your profits at the expense of what somebody else is
Well,
putting.
I'm great at, and thank you for that. That means a lot. And thank you for the kind words. And I know you mean it. I'm really good at sourcing products. So I'm able to get a very good deal for myself, or I can still make money and give people a great deal at the same time. It's not that hard to do.
It's a win-win.
So everybody can win, believe it or not. It can be a win for you. It can be a win for us. It can absolutely be a win for your viewers. So
Right.
yeah, give me a call. I'm happy to talk to anybody. If you do my calendar option, we'll do a Zoom call. I'll be sitting right here and we'll have a Zoom and you can see me in person and, catch up and it's fun, man. It makes my job easy and fun. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I really enjoy these conversations. Again, it's just
Thank you.
a free flowing, off the cuff type of discussion where we share ideas. I think that folks can tell that Matt's a really good guy, and indeed, we see eye to eye. I think on most of the topics that we talk about, and even when we don't, it develops into an interesting exchange of ideas. So hopefully, folks out there appreciated the conversation. Give Matt a call. I like to have him on once a month. I would have you on more often if I actually had the ability to produce more shows, but given how crazy my schedule is, it's difficult to do that. But I like to have you on a consistent basis so folks can get to know you and feel comfortable about making the decision to use Verity Metals. And I can't recommend Matt highly enough. He's going to do well by you, and ultimately that reflects positively on everybody. So thanks so much, Matt, for taking the time here on a Saturday. And we'll be in touch. We'll get another show on the books in the not too distant future. Again, Matt Geiger from veritymetals.com/patriot. You'll see the link right in the description, as well as the phone number and also the links to his social media. So you got a possibility of getting a little added bonus there. You said it's Instagram, X, and Facebook. So we'll have those links in the description for folks. And I will be back with everybody on Monday with Mike King. And of course, next week is Thanksgiving. So first of all, Matt, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Everybody out there, happy Thanksgiving. I'm going to be recording a show on Wednesday with Dave and Mark from News Treason, and we're going to put that out on Thursday so that hopefully everybody will have something positive and insightful to watch on the holiday. So we will be back soon, folks. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. God bless. Godspeed, everybody. Patriot out.